Today's daf is daf Yutes, and we're going to begin with Tnan, which you'll see 3 lines down from the top of the 4 lines down. Now, all we have to know, by way of introduction to today's daf, is the Shita of Abaye. Rava disagrees, but Abaye's Shita is that we have a principle which, if I ever find a magic marker, black marker, I'll write it on the board. It's called P Tikra Yored Tisose, which means that if you have a roof, when you get to the edge of the roof, substantial edge, then you imagine a wall coming down from the edge of the roof, an imaginary wall. That's called God Achis Mechitzas, which means that when it comes to the halachic definition of mechitzos, we have imaginary mechitzos, and Abai takes this very far, and he holds that at the edge of a building or a roof, you can simply imagine. Now, in the case of an achsadra, you have just a roof. There are no walls, so they're being held up by 4 poles. So you can imagine York Visosem on all 4 sides. You've got an imaginary sukkah with 4 defanos.
I mean, there's no
defanos. Imagine, I don't know if you remember the old time chuppahs where they used to have 4 people holding, this, and they had a chuppah on top. That's an achsadra. That's really what Abai has in mind. And he sees it as if it is all covered on all 4 sides, surrounded by 4 mechitzos. It's a magical halacha l'Moshe Sinai that was given to Moshe Rabbeinu at our Sinai. Now we learned in our Mishnah, and the Mishnah talks about a case of an achsadra. An achsadra means that you have houses on 3 sides that converge or open into a common chotzer. Okay, so you enter into this courtyard and you'll see houses on your right, houses on your left, and houses right in front of you. Now what he does is he builds an achsadra. An achsadra is a roof that has no walls to it. But in this case, the roof comes out of the facade of the house. So in a sense, the roof is attached to one dofen, and then in front of each one of these houses, he attaches another achsadra. We can call it a porch or call it a kind of an extension. So he's got now, inside this courtyard, he's got a continuous roofing of the achsadra. And the achsadra is schach posel. Why? Because it's made of boards, and these boards are makabel tumah. They are not there for the sake of schach. They are there to give protection to the area of the front of the house. Each person in front of his house extends his roof with this achsadra. Okay? And the halacha is that since the achsadra is 4 amos in width, right? So from the facade, it extends at least 4 amos. Then the Mishnah says that even if you were to put schach straight across the courtyard, stretching from one porch across to the other porch, and all over, the area under the schach would not be kosher. It's psula. Amai. According to you, Abaye, that doesn't make any sense. Nema, we should apply the principle of P Tikra Yored Visosem, which means that at the end of the porch, let's call it the achsadra, the edge of the achsadra, we should imagine a dofen, like a wall that's coming down. So you've now got walls all over the 3 sides, and you've got schach that covers that entire area. You've got an area that is surrounded by 3 defanos with schach. Why is it possible? Tirgama Rava Libad Abaye. This is what you call intellectual honesty. Rava never accepted Abaye Shita, but nevertheless he defends Abaye. Apparently Abaye wasn't around to defend himself. And he says that according to Abaye, we can interpret our Mishnah, even according to Abaye, reconcile the Mishnah with Abaye, Kishe Hishva es Kiruyo, which means that you don't see the edge of the porch. Now, I have a diagram here, but it's not a very successful one because it's small and it's in black and white. We really need a colored diagram here. I think they published such a book, but I don't have it. Imagine this is the porch, right? When you get to the edge of the porch, towards the middle of the courtyard, there's a certain thickness to it. And that thickness is going to allow you, according to Abaye, to apply the principle of Pi Tikra Yored V'Sotzin. But if he puts schach over the thickness, that means he has some way of suspending the schach in which it covers the edge of the porch, each porch going all the way around, then even Abaye would agree we don't apply the principle of Pi Tikra Yored V'Sotzin. Pi Tikra only applies when you have a profound view of the edge of a roof, and then you can extend it downwards. But if you can't see the roof, the edge of the roof, because it's covered, in this case by schach, then you don't apply the principle of Pi Tikra Yored V'Sotzin. And that's called in the language of the Shas, Kishe Hishva es Keruyo. That means he put his schach exactly at the line of the roof, the thickness of the roof of the Achsadra, and therefore you don't see what's called the chudo shel Achsadra. Chudo means the edge, and therefore you cannot apply the principle of Pi Tikra Yored V'Sotzin. But if, on the other hand, the schach was lifted up on top of the level of the edge of the Achsadra, then the sukkah underneath the schach would be kosher, because we would apply the principle of Pi Tikra Yored V'Sotzin. B'sura masne lahashmato b'hai lishna. In Surah, they had a yeshiva. It was a big yeshiva of Surah in Bavel. And they had a different transmission of the machlokas between Abaye and Rava, b'hai lishna, in the following language. Now, b'hai lishna really doesn't mean in the following language. It means in the language or the presentation that we have presented until now. And according to the original presentation, which is that of Surah, now we're going to see a different presentation in a different part of Bavel. Everybody would agree, even Rava would agree, that I could set up imaginary mechitzos regarding this area of the Achsadra in a case where there's something called tzimim. So again, that we had a discussion about this. Yes, I'll just give it to you, on the surface level. Tzimim are pillars. So let's imagine that at the edge of the porch, you have pillars that hold up the porch. And the distance between each pillar, the airspace, is less than 3 tefachim. Any airspace that's less than 3 tefachim is called lavud, which means, again, one of these imaginary halachas and mechitzas, we imagine it's sasum, as if it was closed, as if that area was filled in. Magical means imaginary. In other words, usually when I think of a mechitza, I think of something physical that I can see. Mechitza got 10 tefachim, and then it goes all the way up to the ceiling. But when it comes to halakhic mitzvos, there's all imagination. Like, for example, if let's say and it doesn't go above that, I imagine as if it went all the way up to the top. Well, let's say I had a suspended mechitza that only goes 10 tefachim from the top, and there's nothing here but airspace. I imagine that the mechitza went all the way down. In the case of Pi Tikra, I'm looking at it. Let's say this is my roof. Imagine this is a roof, and there's nothing here. It's airspace. I imagine as if there's a mechitza. I call it magical because it's not physical. I can't point and say, well, there's a wall, there's a dofen. Again, when you talk about mechitzos, you could literally spend your entire life just on the topic of mechitzos. There is so much. Half of Masechet Shabbos is about mechitzos. 3/4 of Eruvin is about mechitzos. Half of Masechet is about mechitzos. So what I'm giving you is like just the tip of the iceberg. It's asking a Lubavitcher to explain, the 10 spheres while you're standing on one foot,
In the sukkahs that you have, with the straps or rope
That's also
around the
based on
bottom.
imaginary. Why? Because the
That makes-
stropes are less than 3 tefachim one from the other, and we look at it as if it was filled in with solid, just endless machitzot. My Rebbe was a grandson of Reb Chaim Brisker. I don't know if you ever heard of Reb Chaim Brisker. Reb Chaim wrote a sefer which is published after his death, and I would say that probably, if I wouldn't exaggerate, 20%, if not 30% of the sefer is all about machitzos, walls. It's all about walls. What's in a wall, right? Okay. Anyway, Vipupadisa Masni, according to this transmission, even Abaye agrees that unless you have these pillars that are holding up the porches, and the pillars, as we said before, are distance less than 3 tefachim one from the other, then you don't apply the principle of P Tikris Yored V'Sosem, and you can't set up mechitzos or tefanos of the sukkah. However, Yesh Lo P'tzimim, if there are vertical pillars holding up your asadra, meaning your porches, and they're a distance one from the other less than 3 tefachim, Abai Omar Kshera, Rava Omar Sula. So Abai says that we're going to apply the principle of lavud, and that's going to allow me to set up mechitzos below the porches. And therefore, if you have the area that's covered between one porch and the other, and all the other porches, and it's covered by stock, it's a sukkah kshera, and Rava disqualifies. Abai Omar Kshera, the Gemara now analyzes this machloke samrin and lavud. Now the chiddush here of Abaye, lavud, which means that anything that's contiguous by, let's say, 2.9 tefachim is considered sasum. It's as if it's closed up. That's not Abaye's radical break, but Abaye is applying lavud in a very unique way, in a very particular case. And that is that these ptsimim were really, right, the ptsimim on the pillars, they were not structured for the purpose of surrounding the area inside the chutzah. They were meant to serve the area below the porch, below the roof. And you're going to set up lavud that's going to imagine a mechitza for the purpose of the area to the outside of the porch, the area that's within the chutzah. Rav Amar Psula, Rav says that this is not a real mechitza. This whole entity of a mechitza based on the ptsimim is all a halacha l'Moshe b'Sinai. It's something that we got a din of lavud, but lo amrin in lavud, we're not going to say lavud and apply the halacha l'Moshe b'Sinai when Moshe Rabbeinu did not apply it. Moshe Rabbeinu only applied it when he wanted to set up a mechitza that surrounds a certain area, so he's going to use lavud. But when the purpose of whatever he has, in this case the psimim, is not to serve the area that you want to surround and close off with lavud, then we're not going to apply the principle of lavud. But Vehilchas, the Gemara concludes Kalishna Kama, that even Rava would agree that if there are psimim, there are these pillars at a distance of 2.9 tefachim one from the other, underneath, holding up the porch, that we will be machshir the sukkah. And therefore, the whole machlokus between Rav and Abaye is going to revolve around the case where there are no ptsimim, where the porches just jut out from the facade of the houses. And Rava says that we cannot apply pitikra, yored, v'sosem, and set up mechitzos if there are no ptsimim. But if there are ptsimim, then even Rava would agree and concede that there is a sukkah ksher. Rav Ashi, Ashkechel, Rav Kahana to come and Sachech al Gabi Achsadra she'ein lo ptsimim. Rav Ashi found that Rav Kahana was setting up a sukkah in this courtyard that was surrounded by houses which had, each one had a porch that jutted out from the facade of the house. And there were no ptsimim. There were no porches. Sorry, there were no pillars, I meant to say. Which means, in effect, that Rav Kahana accepted the sheet of Abaye. And we don't accept the sheet of Abaye, the machlokas between Rav and Abaye. We always accept the sheet of Rava. I mean, there are only 6 exceptions. And therefore, how could Rav Kahana be relying on Abaye against Rava? Amalei, so Rav Ashi turns to Rav Kahana, he says, Lo Sovar Mar. Is this a rhetorical question? Sir, do you not hold Hadi Amar Rava? That Rava, this is the first lishna of Rava, the first transmission of Rava. Yesh la p'tzimim p'sheira, ein la p'tzimim psula. If there are these pillars holding up the porches, then you have a possibility of applying lavud and then setting up mechitzas, and the sukkah becomes a sukkah kshera. But if there are no p'tzimim, there are no pillars, how could you possibly sit in that sukkah? Achvile, so he indicated to him, Nira mi bifnim v'shava mi bachutz. Rav Kahana showed Rav Ashi that the reason why he could be machshir, he could validate this sukkah, and he could see it as a sukkah kshera, is because it has a third dofen. Okay, what is that third dofen? You may recall, again, from sugyas that we learned earlier in Masechet Succah, that a sukkah requires 2 walls and a third wall, which is only 1 tefach wide. Okay, and he says that the case that I'm dealing with, even according to Rava, would be a sukkah kshera, even in the absence of tzimim. And the reason for that is because he sets up a third dofen. Now, where is that third dofen? That third dofen, which is just a strip of 1 tefach. It's in a sense, a vertical board that's only 1 tefach, that this size, that's how wide it is, can be seen by those who stand on the outside of the sukkah. So imagine if you are entering into the sukkah, you will see that third dofen, which is 1 tefach. If, on the other hand, you're outside the sukkah, you will not see, but we want to make sure that you see it from the inside. Inami, the Gemara offers another interpretation, another possibility, that the case of dofen shlishis, which was Rav Kahana's case, where there was a third dofen that was 1 tefach wide, was nira mi bachutz v'shava mi bifnim. He put it in a way that you could only see it to those who are on the outside. On the inside, you wouldn't even see it. Again, you have a diagram here where it juts out towards the outside of the sukkah. And according to this answer, the Gemara, if it's Eina Nireis, if it cannot be seen for those who stand on the inside of the sukkah, like for example, let's say the Achsadra is very, very long, it goes way beyond the extension of the sukkah, and he left the dofen shlishis, that third wall of his sukkah is outside the sukkah. It's again attached to the dofen of the sukkah, and it could only be seen jutting out from the outside. And it could be that this is what Rav Kahana was showing Rav Ashi, who asked him this question. So again, I have a picture of it here.
How does that make it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me just.
One seeming one column. That's enough.
Well, now we're talking about a case where there are no psimim at all. There are no pillars holding up the porch, but nevertheless, there's a third dofen.
Oh, third dofen.
Correct, and that third dofen is 1 tefach.
What does the third dofen do?
Oh, what the third dofen does is that we're talking about a case where I don't need to apply the principle of P-Tikka Yard V'Sosa because I actually have defanos. How do I have defanos? I have 2 real defanos, right? So, for example, here's your courtyard, so you have Succah, and now you put up 2 defanos, and you have a third dofen, which is 1 tefach.
That's why.
That's why the sukkah is cherry. Oh, so in the first presentation, it's nirami bafnim. You can see it from the inside of the sukkah. Since you can see it from the inside, therefore it's a viable third dofen. According to the second possibility, the second alternative, it's visible from the outside. And even though, according to the second answer, I admit to you it cannot be seen from the inside, nevertheless, it can serve as a third dofen. Why? If it can only be seen on the outside, it's not visible from the inside. The itmar, because we learned, nira mi bachutz v'shava mi b'fnim nidon mishum lechi. We have a new halacha called a lechi. Now, the halacha of a lechi is borrowed from erevin, what we call a mavui. And if you have a mavui which opens up from Rosh Hashanah spilling into a common area where different courtyards share that common area, then you have two options. You could either set up a korah, which is a beam that goes horizontal, or you can set up a lechi, which is a vertical pole. And this vertical pole now has the width of a tefach. Can it serve as a third dofen? So it depends. L'chorah, you should have to be able to see it on the inside. No. Why? Because since a lechi, so imagine it's Shabbos of Sukkot. Every Sukkot has to have at least one Shabbos, right? On Shabbos of Sukkot, when you have this mavu that leads into all the different courtyards, you put up a lechi. That lechi is considered as a mechitza. It's as if you closed off the mavli so that now you can carry from any of the homes and any of the chatzeros into the mavli and vice versa, because you've already closed up your mavli. It no longer looks like it's part of an extension of Rishus HaRab. And we have to learn Erevin for that, but just to get a partition. It's a partition, and why is it a partition? Because he sets up a vertical pole, a vertical slat, if you will, that he sees when he enters into the mavli. And the halacha recognizes that lechi as if he had closed off the entire area. He now has a mavli that is surrounded on four sides. On Shabbos of Sukkot, once we recognize the status of the lechi as a machitz, as a partition to close off the fourth area, it becomes ipso facto a lechi or a dofen as far as Sukkot. And this is a sugi that we learned back on top. Talad, I think it was, Migu Davi Dofen L'Shabbos Havi Dofen L'Sukkah. Another magical halacha.
Why is it important to see it? See it, if you don't see it,
if you see it, then it's part of the sukkah. If you can't even see it, so you're sitting in a sukkah that has only two defanos, that's not going to do. You need that third dofen, even though it's only a tefa, but at least it's a 90 angle, a 90-degree angle. I mean, I'm sitting here.
What if I've got one there? I just can't see it. You know it's not enough.
I don't know. I think it has to be seen, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Itmar nira mi bachutz v'shava mi b'fnim. You could only see it on the outside, and on the inside it's shava, meaning it's blocked by the dolphin, so you can't see it. Nidon mishum lechi. If it's Shabbos of Sukkot, you can recognize it and validate it as a lechi, and lechi hainu p'tzimim, and it has the same status as p'tzimim, which we said before. Even Rav agrees that in the case of p'tzimim, the sukkah is ksher. Tana, now we learned a brisa called psal. What is psal? The word psal means kosher schach. Kosher schach. And it comes from the word psolis. It's the shorish of the word psolis, because the Torah, when it describes schach, it describes it as psolis, goren, v'yekev. Okay, psolis meaning the part that's not edible, because if it's edible, then it's makabel tumah and it's possible schach. So to get schach kosher, you need psolis, the refuse, if you want to call it that. Now, what's the case in this brisa of psal? Hayotze min sukkah. It extends beyond the sukkah. So you have four defanos, let's say, and you've got schach that extends beyond the dofen. Now I want to sit underneath that schach that's on the other side of the dofen, and the brisa says nidon kisukkah. So the Gemara asks, "My pisol hayotze min sukkah, Omar ula Kanim hayotzim leachorei sukkah. Right? Let's say he has a middle. Let's say there are three defanos. There's one on his right, one on his left, and one in front of him. That's called a dofen emtsoi, the middle dofen. And some of the reeds of the schach go beyond that middle dofen. So the Gemara asks, I don't get it. How could you possibly say that the apostle is kosher, meaning underneath that schach that goes beyond the sukkah, the wall of the sukkah is kosher? After all, you're on the other side of the sukkah. You don't have three defanos. Maybe you have one dofen, but certainly not three. And the Gemara answers, Bid de'ika. We're talking about a case that he has three defanos. In other words, not only does the schach extend beyond the dofen, but there are defanos on his right and left that also extends beyond. So in effect, he really has two different sukkahs. He's got one sukkah in this direction, and then he's got defanos that extend beyond this dofen emtsoi with schach, which is called pasol, so that covers that area, and now is covering an area that has three defanos. So the Gemara asks the question about Be'idin Hechsher Sukkah, but wait a minute, how far do these defanos go beyond that third dofen? Maybe a couple of tfachim, but we need 7 tfachim. And the Gemara answers B'de'ika, that we're talking about a case in this brisa where it goes 7 tfachim beyond the wall, right? It extends beyond, and it's covered by schach. Gemara says, Be'idin Silsa Barupsa Michavsa. My gosh, it's open to the sun beyond that dofen. And there's going to be more sunlight than shade. And we've already established back on Daf, where was it, Daf Beis, that if you have more sunlight than shade, it's a apostle of Sukkah. Gemara says, B'de'ika. He was able to have enough schach that if you look at the ground below that schach, you'll see mostly shade. And he has a beautiful picture of it here, which you can take a look at a little bit later if you like. And the schach goes out and extends, the walls are going out, and they extend, and he's got shade on the bottom. So the Gemara says, I mean, if that be the case, what do I need this brisa for? What is the brisa coming to teach me? I mean, after all, he's got 3 defanos, he's got schach kosher, he's got sheva tfachim by sheva tfachim. What's the issue? Malditem, I would have said, ligavoy avide, but livroi lo avide. I would say that there's ligavoy, meaning when he set up these defanos, his intention was to close off the area inside these defanos. When he set up his third dofen, he allowed for some of the defanos to extend beyond, but the defanos were not there for the area beyond, outside the sukkah, in the back of the sukkah. He did not do it livroi. Livroi means for the outside. Right? Like the word brisa means outside the Mishnah, from the same shorish of livroi. Is emo lo? I would say that we cannot be machshir the sukkah and the schach on an area of the defanos that was not meant to close off that area outside the sukkah. Mashmalon, that's the big chiddush of the brisa, that it's still kosher, even though it was not set up for that area. L'maisa covers that area, it closes and it closes it, and therefore it's a schach kosher, and the sukkah is ksher. Rav Yosef Yami Shavai, they both agree. Hacha, in this brisa, now we're going to have 4 different interpretations of this brisa. We're up to the second one now. Hacha b'kanim hayotzim lifnim min sukkah. And we're talking about a case where there's an opening, right? There are only 3 defanos. So on one side, it's open into the sukkah. And on that side, he's got kanim. Kanim are kosher schach, small, thin boards, so to speak, flats. Umashchavi ozla chadadofen. And one of the 4, he only has 3 defanos. So one of the 3 defanos extends. Behadaihu. And the Bryce is going to tell me the following: that Ma'odetemi, you would say, Holespahu Hechsher Sukkah. Maybe he doesn't have enough schach to have 7 tfachim of a Hechsher Sukkah. Mashmalon, that we don't see it as a new Sukkah requiring an area of 7 tfachim. We see it as an extension of the old Sukkah. So imagine Rabbi say, this is my wall. I've got two walls on this side. Right? So you're looking at the open area from where you're sitting. And I've got schach on the top of these three walls, these three tfanos. And the schach extends beyond that roof, and there's a dofen on this side. So you might have said, wait a minute, any schach that extends beyond the area, the word I want to use, the final extension of the tfanos, that belongs to a whole new sukkah. And I can't sit under that schach because that schach doesn't have tfanos on each of its sides. It may have one dofen here, but it doesn't have a dofen on the other side. No, we see that these kanim ayotzim are an extension of the sukkah, and it's completely swallowed up as part of the sukkah. We don't need a shear of 7 tefachim for the area that's covered beyond that dofen, meaning with a schach that extends beyond.
Imagine that the wall and the third wall.
I don't think you need lavud in this case. I'll tell you why. Lavud is a case where you have empty space. Here we're not talking about filling up the space. We have three tfanos. We don't need a fourth dofen. But what we need to know is that the schach that extends beyond the dofen, can that really bring the sukkah outside of the area of the dofen?
It can.
It can. Rabbi Bar Chana, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, lo nitzchel. He has another pshat in the Brayso. Sukkah sheruba tzilsa mirubasa michamsa. That most of the sukkah has more tzel than sunlight, but miuta. But if you go in part of the sukkah, the schach is very thin, right? It's thinned out, and it's chamsa mirubasa mitzelsa. Is ma'od detema? I would say tipasel b'hach purta. I cannot sit under that area where there's very little schach, because there I'm going to get mostly sunlight. Mashmalon, the Brayso wants to teach us that since most of the sukkah is tzelsa, merubsa, mechamsa, most is enough, and we apply the principle of rov. So now the Gemara asks, my yotze. But what does the Brayso mean when it says yotze? According to you, there's nothing going outside. There's no schach that is extending beyond the tefanos. Yotze mehechsher sukkah. The word yotze here means it doesn't have what normally it would take to be machshir sukkah, namely tzelsa, merubsa, lechamsa, because in this case, it's kind of batel. It loses its own status. It is swallowed up by the sukkah, which is mostly tzelsa, merubsa, lechamsa. And you could sit under that area, and you could eat under that area. It's part and parcel of the sukkah. Rabbi Yoshia Amar lo nitzrecha. The Brayso is teaching me what el ischach posel pachos mishlosha b'sukkah ketana. A sukkah ketana means it has 7 by 7 tefachim, and the kosher schach does not cover the entire sukkah. It only covers part of the sukkah. Now we have schach posel that covers another part of the sukkah. And the Brayso wants to tell me, as long as the extended area of posel schach is less than 3 tfachim, then it's considered like we have mostly schach kosher. Why? Because we have 7 tfachim of schach. 4 are kosher, and 3 are posel. But he doesn't have a full 3. If he had a full 3, then he doesn't have sheva al sheva tfachim of schach. But if, and here we're going to use the concept of lavud. If, excuse me, the schach posel is less than 3 tfachim, so then we could consider it as if there is schach kosher. Again, the Gemara is going to ask the same old question: how do you fit that into the language of the Brayso? But just before we address that question, let's just understand the following: that the Brayso teaches us that this strip of schach posel, which is less than 3 tefachim, does not posel the sukkah. He says, although the valid sukkah measures less than sheva tefachim by sheva tefachim, nevertheless the schach posel could supplement it to complete the required minimum. Once it's wider than 3 tefachim, then it disqualifies the sukkah. So the Gemara immediately asks, well, wait a second. It says in the Brisa Yotze. Well, where's the Yotze over here? What's going beyond the Tefanos? Yotze v'Torah sukkah. Once again, the same answer, that it's not considered a min of schach kosher if it's Yotze v'Torah sukkah. It's not schach kosher. Maskif lo Rav Oshia lo yehei ella avir. Why don't we consider the schach puzzle as if it was empty space? There was nothing there at all. The avir pachos b'shloshet tefachim b'sukkah ketana mi puzzle. I don't need the brisa to establish a halacha in schach puzzle, meaning that schach puzzle, if it's less than 3 tefachim, it does not disqualify the sukkah. Forget about schach puzzle and the status thereof. We don't have to define, as you did, Rabbi Yoshia, that since you have less than 3 tefachim of schach puzzle, therefore the sukkah is kshera. It's kshera for a different reason, because it's not worse than avir. If you had empty space, you didn't have anything there, complete strip of empty space without any stuff, it doesn't passel the sukkah unless it's got 3 tefachim of avir. Amalei Rabbi Abba answers this question to Rabbi Oshia, and he says the following: Zemitz taref the yishenim tach, the zemitz taref the ein yishenim tach. When you have avir that's less than 3 tefachim, although it doesn't disqualify the sukkah, but you're not allowed to sleep or eat under the avir. The Brisa wants to teach me a big chiddush, that in the case of schach puzzle, if it's less than 3 tefachim and you have a sukkah ketana, you could eat underneath the schach puzzle. So the Gemara asks immediately, Umika midi ditz tarufe mitztaref, for who atzmo eno kosher? How can you consider the schach puzzle as an extension of the sukkah and allow me to eat under non-kosher schach? It doesn't make any sense. You're being mitzaref non-kosher schach to the rest of the sukkah because it's less than 3 tefachim. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Eliashiv in. That is really true. And now he's going to try to show you, where do I find in the halacha a precedent that you could have something that in and of itself is possible, and yet it could be mitzuraf, it could be integrated to be machshir. And for this, we have to learn a little bit of mikvah. So mikvah has to have a minimum shear of 40 sa, a volume of water. Now, in this case, he's got mud, literally moist, wet mud, which is called tit ha-neruk. We're on the top now of Yutes Amid Beis. And it's very soft and moist mud. Yochiach. Let's prove our point. If you have less than 40 sa, the shear, the minimum shear of a mikvah of water, but some of it is this moist kind of mud, is then it becomes kosher to be mashlim the shear, to complete the shear. But yet, hatovel bo, if in this mikvah he has only mud, that's all he has, is 40 sa of wet mud, lo also lo tefillah. So you see that even though the mud itself is possible tefillah, nevertheless it can be mitzaref. It could be integrated together with water to create a mikvah. Again, you'd have to have the proper proportions. Let's say you have 51% water, 49% mud, then it could be kosher. But if, let's say, you had a tefillah where you jumped into mud, it would not be kosher. And in the parallel case, you can have schach posel that could be mashlim the shear, but yet, in and of itself, the schach itself could, if you, let's say you had a sukkah made up of that schach, it would be possible. Rabbi Eliezer, okay, so that leads us to the Mishnah here